Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video. Today we're going to do a character guide on Balthier. So Balthier is a pretty interesting character. We'll just put it this way, they're selling him really hard on his Shinryu fight. So I'll do a video of that and explain why they're selling him so much. But it's really about debuff removal and buff removal on the enemies. And that's really what Balthier is all about, right? So he's kind of a utility character, does okay damage as a ranged damage dealer. But really, he's a buff debuff manager is what he does. He really helps influence that, and so he's good in fights like this one where the enemies have very aggressive buffs and very aggressive debuffs, and he's going to help you deal with those things, right? So first, let's go ahead. We'll look at his calls, and then we'll do the artifacts and the spheres, and then we'll jump into a little showcase on him, right? So. I think bringing Balthier as a call to a fight like this would be very good. So his call would be very good in situations where maybe you don't want him in the party and you don't have like a buff debuff manager type character and you want to be able to do that through calls. He's definitely a call you can bring for that, right? So his 15 call here, the big thing is it's going to remove 3 random buffs from the target. So if you hit someone, it's just going to wipe 3 buffs off of them. The other one is the LD here. On the LD, this is actually going to cleanse the party of debuffs and then also remove 3 random buffs from all enemies. So very, very good. And that's kind of like the theme of his kit, right? It's all about helping with your debuffs and getting rid of their buffs is really what he does, right? So let's go ahead. Artifacts, very easy. Balthier is an older character, so just attack 108, max brave 330. He doesn't have any crazy C50 passives to worry about. So go, look at that. I got 3 perfect ones here. 5 CP, attack 108, max brave 330. So CP is not going to be an issue for my Balthier. 3 perfect artifacts there. And then we're going to go ahead and look at the spheres. So on the spheres, pretty flexible on what you can do. The A sphere, you want brave damage or attack. He is ranged or physical attack, so you go with one of those. I really like to use up spheres, and I've said this before in the A slot. I like to use up spheres that are maybe exclusive to certain types of characters first before I use up my generic ones. So this is a great spot for Kain. Kain has a very good ranged attack up sphere. So I feel like that's one of the better ones you can throw on him because not a lot of characters can make use of the ranged spheres. So putting Kain there I think is a pretty good idea. So I put Kain on the A slot. But you can go with whatever you've got as long as Balthier can trigger it. Just keep in mind Balthier does not do weakness damage, so don't put like a weakness damage sphere on. But anything that's just like breaking an enemy, crit damage, any of those basic ones are going to be fine. For Balthier, just look for brave damage and then some type of attack, right? D slot, once again, very easy. Just do one of these generic attack spheres I always talk about. So Ash, Saz, Lise, Hope. Luna Freya won't work. Queen, I think, would work. So anything like that would work. Just increase party attack there. Wakka, he doesn't really give enough buffs to activate Wakkas. If you're running him with other buffers, then it could work. Well, I guess Wakka could work because you're typically stealing buffs from the enemy, right? So you can bank on a lot of times probably having enough buffs to activate Wakka. So I think Wakka would be okay on him because typically you're going to use him in situations where he's stealing buffs, but it's a little situational, right? So if you want to be safer, just do a more generic D slot. And then on the E slot, I would say give him more utility. Give him more utility because that's the type of character he is. So there are like some of these aura spheres that will give like debuffs through auras, so like a speed down or something like that. Or I think Ferris is a really good one here. Just to add poison to his kit, like as an aura, I think is a very, very good one to have. And I mean, you could give him like an attack one if you wanted to. So, like your Euphies or something like that. You definitely could throw that on there. But because Balthier is not really a damage dealer and more of a utility character, I kind of like the idea of putting Ferris on there. So I like Ferris to add the poison to his kit. That's just me personally, right? All right, so let's go ahead and hop into the showcase. This should be a fairly easy showcase. I don't have... I am going into the current Shinryu, which is very aggressive. So I am bringing Gladio just so, like, I'm safe. I'm not even going to worry about friend units. We're not bringing in any GIMP selfies. We just won't bring in any selfies, right? Because we're not going to go into an FR here because I don't have his FR. So I will just simply explain his FR conditions at the end. I did not pull for it. I feel like it is a skippable banner personally. But it depends on your resources and if you like him or not. He's definitely not a bad character, right? So he does open with a free skill use. The big thing with Balthier is he's got this overhead buff here, right? This sky plying straw, right? And so what it is, it stacks up to 5 levels. And the way that this thing stacks is it gets 1 stack after each like Balthier turn or action, but it gets +2 if you steal a buff from the enemies, which a lot of his skills do, so you can stack it up pretty quick. Now, a great way to open the fight is if you just open with his AA, so we can open with the AA here for free skill use, okay? That's going to put up the 4 stacks, and then you can just use another skill, and it's going to instantly be at 5 stacks. This overhead is like really key to like his auras. That's part of what makes him good, is he actually has good auras. So basically with this overhead, he's getting 30% Brave Retain, and then with stack 1 he gets attack 80% and then overflow up, and then max Brave plus 50%, and then Brave damage 30%, and then HP damage 20% up, and then it extends the stack effects to allies. So the thing is you have to have it at 5 stacks for all of those buffs to be extended to your party. Otherwise, they're only on him. So you really want it at 5 stacks so that the party's getting the benefit of all those buffs I just listed, right? The AA is just a Brave Steel attack, so it reduces... So it's like a Gravity. It gravities the enemies down to 0, takes that Brave to himself, and does an additional Brave gain. And then he gets an attack plus 30% and Brave damage limit up. So pretty good AA there, right? So now we basically can kind of go in and do whatever attacks that we want to, right? I kind of want the enemies to have buffs to actually show this off, but we'll just explain it, and then as the enemies put buffs on, I'll kind of explain what these do. But let's start with Snatch Shot. Snatch Shot. Basically, with the 15 and 35, think of Snatch Shot as your AoE. So we'll go ahead and do that. So you can see that does splash damage. It was single target with splash. But what this one does, and you have to have this Way of the Sky Pirate 3 up, which is one of his buffs. So Way of the Sky Pirate is a stacking buff, okay? And I believe you start with all the stacks right away. Let me just double... Yeah, you can see it's fully... Yeah, you just have to have Way of the Sky Pirate 3 up. And that it's pretty much fully stacked up immediately, right? So as long as you have that, you're going to get the plus versions of your attacks. So that's why we had the plus version. It just makes it a little bit stronger. The big thing with Snatch Shot, though, is it steals 3 random buffs from each enemy, and then it extends them by 1 turn. So those buffs would go to Balthier and then would get extended. And then he gets a Way of the Sky Pirate. He adds the buff and then adds stacks onto it. And if you break or hit a broken target, it does 2 stacks instead of 1. So that's very, very good, right? All right, so now let's go ahead with Gladio. We'll just Tempest. And like literally on this fight, you need something to protect yourself, because these enemies are aggressive. Like I said, I'm gonna do probably today after I finish my character guides, I will do a Shinryu run of this. I think I've got a plan of how I want to attack it, but people online are saying this is a pretty tough fight, right? So we'll see if I can get it done. My thought is I'm just gonna bring Gladio to protect, and then you need to bring some type of buff remover. So it could be like Vanille, Ferris, or I'll probably just bring Balthier because that's what they want. And then I'm just going to bring like Renoa and try to blow it up. We'll see. I did do a full defense comp last night, and I almost had it done. It took me like 4 force times, but I did it like, it was like 72 turns. So I missed the turn comp by like 2. But I did do it last night with a defense comp with Ferris. And I definitely could have optimized that better and probably gotten it done. But we'll try a more offensive comp for my recording, right? Okay, so... we did Snatch Shot. Let's do Great Aim. Okay, so we have an enemy with some buffs on, right? And these enemies put very powerful buffs on, okay? So right now he's got an Int Brave up and a Retain up. So what Great Aim is going to do, it's going to actually remove debuffs from himself. So if he had any debuffs on, it would remove them, okay? Does an attack. And then it's going to steal 3 random buffs from the target and extend them by 1 turn. And then this also will extend his Way of the Sky Pirate buff, which we already talked about. So let's go ahead and do Great Aim. This is more single target here. Yep. And then you can see those buffs got wiped off the enemy, and Balthier stole them. So now Balthier has them. Okay. And these enemies do some really, really nasty buffs. They do ones where it like reduces your HP damage to 0, reduces your Brave damage to 1. And Balthier can just steal those and like have them, right? So that's pretty good. Now, what makes this fight so hard is in how they're pushing Balthier so much is, one, the enemies are constantly buffing, as you're seeing, but you can't debuff them. They're immune to every debuff in the game. So you can't just take Ferris and throw a bunch of debuffs on. You can use Ferris to cleanse all of their buffs, but it won't actually apply. So you can't just bring a bunch of debuffers to overwrite their buffs. That's what makes this so hard. Let's go ahead and, oh yeah, let's Quick Prayer. I probably should have done this first turn. Quick Prayer Balthier, because we're in a showcase. I'm not actually fighting the Shinryu right now. We're just doing a showcase. And then, like I said, I'll actually do the Shinryu. But yeah, I think Balthier is simply the path of least resistance here. I was really excited because I'm like, oh, I think Aerith would be really good here because um, Aerith, makes it so that your party can't be debuffed, and it makes the enemies so they can't buff. The problem is the thing that makes it so the enemies can't buff is a debuff you have to apply. And since you can't apply that debuff, that would have been perfect, right? To have Aerith. I think Aerith would have been perfect here if you could prevent them from buffing, but it doesn't work. So that's kind of unfortunate, right? Okay, so now we can use the EX, which is called Fires of War. So let's pop that. And let's just see what the damage looks like here. Okay, it's decent, right? 600k damage. So that removes all debuffs from himself. Does that big AoE attack, will steal 3 random buffs from each enemy and extend them by 1 turn. And it extends his own buffs by 1 turn. And then he gets a buff called Snatch, which is just an attack up, overflow stolen up, and then all enemies get attack and max brave minus 20%. And here's the thing, this is once again how they're selling Balthier here, is those debuffs on the enemies are attached to his buff. So you're not actually applying a debuff to the enemy, so you are actually essentially nerfing the enemies through an aura is what you're doing. It's through his own buff. So that's a way to kind of get around it, right? All right, so we did all that. So next, let's do the LD. And then basically, I just got to explain the force, and we're out of here, right? Pretty easy. So let's do Tides of Fate, which is the LD. So basically what this is this removes all debuffs from the party, recovers 1 use of skill 1 and skill 2. So it is important that you're using a use of skill 1 and skill 2 before popping this LD. This will also steal 3 random buffs from each enemy and extend them by 1 turn, and then extends his Way of the Pirate buff, which we had talked about earlier, right? So you can see Balthier here is quite loaded up with buffs, and he's stealing a lot of this stuff from the enemies. I believe he stole this HP damage up from an enemy, right? So pretty good. He just steals them, extends them, and he's going to be full of buffs. So like I said, if you're using him in these types of situations, Wakka actually can be good here for his sphere if you wanted to go that route, right? And then lastly, we just have the FR to explain, which I cannot demo for you right now, but basically what the FR would do, it would also remove all debuffs from the party, steals 3 random buffs from each target, and extends them by 1 turn. And then this is an instant turn rate, so then he can go in and start his own force time right away. His HP damage conditions are ranged brave damage. So if you do a ranged attack, it's plus 20%. If you're attacking a target that has no buffs on, plus 40. That's actually pretty easy to do because there's, even if you're not, using, even without Balthier, I mean, Balthier is going to be in your party, right, with his FR. But there's a lot of bosses that you can just like no turn the boss and they don't interrupt and put buffs on and they don't start with buffs. So that 40% is just like a freebie, right? And then if you remove an enemy buff, you get plus 80%, which is pretty ridiculous, right? So, so if the enemy has a buff on, you won't get that 40%. But if you remove the buff, you're going to get 80 plus the 20 for range damage. So he's going to do 100% each time he does that. And then if the enemy starts with no buffs, then you're going to get 60. So he's either going to get 60 or 100% per attack. So he can do a really hefty force gauge, right? Not too bad. Let's just pop another LD here for fun. So anyways, guys, there you go. That's Balthier. Pretty basic. You really just, like I said, the best way to describe him is he's a buff debuff manager, and that's what he's doing. He's going to manage your debuffs and help keep them off, and he's going to manage the enemies from buffing, and he's going to apply those buffs to himself. So anyways, let me know what you all think of Balthier. Thanks for watching, and we will catch you all on the next one.